Recent reports from NetEase confirm that Russia has significantly increased its imports of advanced military equipment from China. This development is attributed to the ongoing Western sanctions against Russia, which have caused disruptions in its military-industrial sector. The imported equipment includes diverse technologies ranging from missile systems to radar technologies, marking a critical shift as Russia seeks to mitigate the impacts of international restrictions. Since the invasion of Ukraine, Western countries have significantly tightened export controls on Russia, causing severe difficulties for its military-industrial sector. Once on par with the United States in terms of military technology, Russia has fallen behind in both technology and equipment. In this context, Russia has had no choice but to turn to China, a former manufacturing powerhouse, for assistance. China's current technological and manufacturing capabilities are sufficient to supply Russia with various types of military equipment. As a result, Russia has increased its imports of military equipment from China, not only to fill the gaps in its own military arsenal, but also to mitigate the pressure from Western countries. Data indicates that a large portion of China's military exports to Russia are routed through Hong Kong, transforming the city into a crucial hub within the supply chain. This role has led to significant changes in Hong Kong's position, shifting from a neutral intermediary to a more active participant in China-Russia relations. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to China could be seen as a final negotiation. If China continues to support Russia, it is likely that a trade war between the U.S. and China will ensue, followed by further severe sanctions. In such a scenario, U.S. sanctions against China would also extend to Hong Kong. A 2023 report highlights Hong Kong's role in facilitating the transfer of Western-manufactured microelectronic components to Russian military-related enterprises. Since the onset of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Hong Kong's exports of integrated circuits, particularly semiconductors, have surged, reaching approximately $400 million in 2022. Making it a leading hub in semiconductor trade with Russia. Many of these trades violate U.S. sanctions towards Russia. According to data from the Indian research firm Export Genius, between February 24th and December 31st, 2022, Russia's semiconductor imports featured 3,292 transactions, each worth at least $100,000, with approximately 70% of these transactions involving products made by U.S. chip manufacturers, totaling $740 million in value. Of these transactions, about 75%, that is, 1,774 transactions, were shipped from Hong Kong or mainland China, many by small to medium-sized companies, some of which were established after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. These transactions amounted to $750 million, showing a tenfold increase in U.S. chip exports to Russia from Hong Kong and China, compared to the period before the conflict began. Data from the Washington-based nonprofit Silverado Policy Accelerator indicates that from March to December 2022, nearly 90% of the global chip exports to Russia came from mainland China and Hong Kong. Following the invasion of Ukraine, there was a surge in new companies registered in Hong Kong with names including Russia. Local Hong Kong organization Liber Research Community, which focuses on the development of Hong Kong, reviewed new registrations and name changes in the company's registry. They found that from February 24 to October 2022, there were 35 new companies registered in Hong Kong with names including Russia, compared to only 13 in the same period in 2021. The Liber Research Community believes these registration numbers reflect a tightening economic connection between Hong Kong and Russia. Analysis by Bloomberg found that from January to May last year, over 200 Russian companies received 17,000 chips valued at $25 million from the American semiconductor company Texas Instruments Inc. The largest recipients were MPP Idoma and VMK, with the transactions handled by two Hong Kong companies, which were sanctioned by the U.S. in October 2023 for supplying to Russian military-related companies. Texas Instruments and another U.S. semiconductor company, Analog Devices, both deny having directly sold chips to entities in Hong Kong. Since the anti-extradition law movement in 2019, The Chinese government's control over Hong Kong has become increasingly stringent, and the high degree of autonomy promised under the one country, two systems principle in the Basic Law is almost non-existent. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine under the authorization of Chinese authorities, the Hong Kong government has blatantly disregarded Western sanctions and deliberately relaxed export controls. A report by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace notes that Hong Kong's description as a neutral global trade hub connecting East and West no longer holds. But one thing is clear to the Western world. Hong Kong no longer has a non-aligned stance, as it now stands with the emerging China-Russia axis. Senior media personality Shi Shan stated that China has tightly integrated Hong Kong with the mainland, removing its role as an intermediary. Blinken's visit to China could be the last negotiation, and if China continues to support Russia, further severe U.S. sanctions are likely to begin. He noted that the U.S. is gradually tightening China's access to high-tech products, precipitating the imminent U.S.-China trade war. Therefore, future U.S. sanctions against China and Russia, especially in high-tech, will inevitably include Hong Kong. He said, Hong Kong, previously a superconnector, is likely to be implicated and could suffer greater damage in the future. The Russia-Ukraine war has continued for over 2 years, and without the support of China and Chinese companies, Russia would find it challenging to sustain the conflict. As U.S. sanctions intensify, Chinese banks find it increasingly difficult to facilitate China-Russia trade finance, making business with Russia more challenging for Chinese companies. Some have resorted to underground payments in Russia, but face significant risks. Do you know how hard it is to get money from Russia these days? We've made all these metal detectors, and they're just sitting here because we can't ship them out. Our bank told us we can't accept payments from Russia, whether it's in yuan or rubles. Our Russian agent says they can transfer money to France XP, one of the top brands in our industry for metal detectors. If they can send money to France, why can't they send it to China? Reuters reported on April 28th that due to concerns about U.S. sanctions, a home appliance manufacturer in Guangdong found it difficult to ship products to Russia. The company's founder, Mr. Wang, stated that to settle payments for electronic products, the company is considering using currency brokers active along the China-Russia border. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the United States has imposed a series of sanctions on Russia and Russian entities. On April 26, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed the strongest views on the Chinese Communist Party's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine during a meeting with top officials in Beijing. He pointed out directly that without the support of the CCP, Russia's attack on Ukraine would be difficult to sustain. The Wall Street Journal reported that before Blinken's visit to China, U.S. officials hoped to persuade the Chinese government to make changes by warning of the risk of cutting off Chinese banks' access to U.S. dollars, as well as the potential impact on China-Europe trade relations. These banks are key intermediaries for the CCP's commercial exports to Russia, handling payments and providing credit for client companies' trade transactions. Sources told Reuters that as major Chinese banks withdraw financing for Russia-related transactions, some Chinese companies are beginning to turn to smaller border banks and currency brokers, and even used banned cryptocurrencies. Mr. Wang said, "You simply cannot conduct business normally through official channels. As major banks now require months instead of days to clear payments from Russia, he resorts to non-traditional payment channels, as well as downsizing his business." Mr. Wang said that a manager of a large state-owned bank he used previously told him that the bank was concerned about potential U.S. sanctions on handling Russian transactions. A manager of a listed electronics company in Guangdong said that since early March, nearly all major Chinese banks have suspended settlements with Russia. An anonymous banker from one of China's 4 major state-owned banks stated that the bank has intensified its scrutiny of its Russia-related businesses to avoid the risk of sanctions. The head of a trade institution in a southeastern province representing Chinese enterprises' interests in Russia stated, "Transactions between China and Russia will increasingly go through underground channels, but these methods carry significant risks. China's major banks are very fearful of U.S. sanctions." Sources told Reuters at the end of last month that banks in China, Turkey, and the UAE are becoming more cautious about U.S. secondary sanctions. beginning to require their clients to provide written guarantees to ensure that no individuals or entities listed on the US SDN, specially designated nationals and blocked persons list, are involved in the transactions or payments. This has led to delays and even refusals in the collection of payments for oil and fuel by Russian oil companies, which the Kremlin confirmed at the time. With the potential addition of new sanctions, everyone's getting nervous about receiving payments from trade with Russia. Before, people used to bypass SWIFT and wire yuan to domestic banks through cross-border transactions, then submit the foreign exchange settlement documents to complete the application. But now, this route is getting more difficult because domestic banks, especially those with branches in major developed regions in Europe and America, are cutting off payments from Russia to avoid being implicated in sanctions. Plus, with changes and additions to the sanctions list, banks holding foreign assets are now referred to as market banks. With the increasing uncertainty overseas, many exported goods have become sensitive items. The scrutiny on these products is tighter, and for cross-border e-commerce sellers, especially those who stock their products, the complexity of their foreign exchange settlement documents has increased. Some village banks along the Russia-China border in northeast China can still receive payments, but there are bottlenecks, and some merchants report waiting several months to open accounts. A chemical machinery company in Jiangsu province has been waiting 3 months to open an account with a rural commercial bank in Jilin. According to Liu, an employee of the company, since February, the Bank of China has blocked payments from Liu's Russian clients. The manager of the listed electronics company in Guangdong stated, "We have given up on the Russian market. Eventually, there was more than 10 million yuan, around $1.4 million owed from the Russian side, and we gave up. The process of receiving payments is extremely annoying." Mr. Wang is reconsidering his business in Russia. He said, "I might gradually scale down my operations there, because the slow payment process is detrimental to our liquidity. Moreover, you don't know what might happen in the future. The channels might one day be completely closed." Since Russia's invasion of its neighbor Ukraine, the US has thought to counter attempts to circumvent Western sanctions, including imposing sanctions on businesses in China, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. On May 1st, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen stated, "Treasuries has consistently warned that companies will face significant consequences for providing material support for Russia's war, and the U.S. is imposing them today on almost 300 targets." The sanctions also covered more than 20 entities from Hong Kong and China, including Anyang Forging Machinery Industry Co. Ltd. in Henan Province, CFU Shipping Co. Ltd., Chengdu Keelink Wireless Technology Co. Ltd., Chongqing Zongshen Aero Engine Manufacturing Co. Ltd., and Finder Technology Ltd. Finder Technology has been accused of shipping 293 batches of drone components and other electronic products to Russia. Another company, Zhuhang Aviation Technology Shenzhen Co. Ltd., is alleged to have supplied drone propellers, signal jammers, sensors, and engines to Russia. Zhongcheng Heavy Equipment Defense Technology Shandong Group is accused of supplying the paramilitary Wagner Group. The U.S. Treasury Department has, for the first time, sanctioned manufacturers and suppliers of cellulose and nitrocellulose, which are precursors for making gunpowder, rocket propellants, and other explosives. Several companies in Russia and China have been sanctioned for trading in these materials, with Hengshui Heshuo Cellulose Limited and Hengshui Yuanchen Trading Limited accused of shipping large quantities of nitrocellulose to Russia. On April 8th, in a speech in Beijing, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen foreshadowed some of the sanctions that will be announced on May 1st. She stated that companies, including those in the People's Republic of China, must not provide material support for Russia's war efforts, warning of severe consequences if they do. Yellen also warned that the U.S. might sanction mainland banks involved in facilitating significant transactions that channel military or dual-use goods to Russia's defense industrial base. Although Chinese financial institutions were not included in the May 1st sanctions announcement, it is noted that Chinese banks have significantly reduced their business with Russia, functioning almost like underground banks. On May 1st, officials from the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, told Reuters that the FCC is moving to block Huawei, ZTE, and other foreign companies deemed a threat to U.S. national security from having their wireless equipment certified. The FCC plans to vote on a bipartisan proposal this month to ensure that telecommunications certification bodies and testing labs that certify wireless devices for the U.S. market are not influenced by companies with security concerns. On April 30th, the FCC denied Huawei's testing lab the eligibility to participate in the Equipment Authorization Program. Companies excluded from participating in the Equipment Certification Authorization Program include not only Huawei, but also Hikvision Digital Technology, Dahua Technology, and Hytera Communications. The new proposal will be preliminarily voted on at the FCC meeting on May 23rd. The FCC stated that the new proposal would permanently prohibit Huawei and other entities posing a national security risk from playing any role in the Equipment Authorization Program, also providing the necessary tools for the FCC and U.S. national security partners to protect this crucial process. According to Bloomberg, regulators have acted to ban a Huawei lab from approving telecommunications equipment for use in the U.S. and have proposed similar actions against other suppliers considered national security threats, including several Chinese companies. This represents another significant blow to Chinese tech giants like Huawei and ZTE from the U.S. since the passing of specific congressional acts targeting them.